Damn guys, it's safe to say I did not expect that much support on my last video, but considering how much Beyblade is trending right now on the internet and the actual quality of the show, I'm honestly less surprised than a lot of people that this shit is making a comeback. Since if you've really taken the time to watch and enjoy Beyblade, you realize it isn't much different than your standard shonen battle series full of auras, explosions, and high stakes, plus a little comedy here and there. Which is why I thought it would be a perfect idea to pin the strongest characters in Beyblade against Shonen Jump's iconic Big Three, who everyone and their mother also seems to be making a video on, to see how this series stacks up against some of the strongest MCs in all of manga, so that we as a community can conclude whether these spinning fucking tops are actually that serious and low-key sub-Goku level, or if they're really nothing special compared to the goats of shonen. So without further ado, let's get into it. To kick things off, we'll be talking about the Beyblade versus scaling, which I've already made a video about. However, for anyone who hasn't watched that video, I established that Beyblade top tiers like Jinka and Pegasus, Ryuga and El Drago, and Kyoya and Leon are bare minimum planetary in terms of AP, scaling off feats like Helios and Jinka destroying a world-ending meteor, Pegasus and El Drago stopping Spiral Force, and Nemesis having the power to destroy the world with the Black Sun. And to reiterate, this is at the bare minimum, as base like Storm and Cosmic Pegasus have also shown feats of being able to harness the power of galaxies, and Meteor El Drago was able to cancel out Twisted Tempo's special move, which uses the power of time and space to create a dimension with a black hole capable of consuming the entirety of said dimension, which would give El Drago, Tempo, and any base that scale to and above them universal level AP if you opt to use this meta. I only mention this though because there are a lot of brain-dead idiots claiming that everything in Beyblade is just effects and animation, and none of the feats like Pegasus calling upon the power of a galaxy or Ryuga literally destroying mountains are real, I guess. Even though we've literally seen base spirits materialize and people talking about the magical animals we see in the stadium. Having said all that though, I will admit that the show can be inconsistent when it comes to power scaling and feats at times, which could lead you to believe that some of this shit is gassed up. However, I don't really think that takes away from the validity of the aforementioned feats, and believe anime scaling in general should be taken with a grain of salt, which is why I presented multiple metas in terms of AP in the first place. However, when it comes to speed, things are a lot more clear-cut, since both Cosmic and Storm Pegasus, as well as any Bey that scales to them, would be more than capable of moving at 2 trillion times the speed of light, scaling off Storm and Cosmic Pegasus' feats of traveling to distant galaxies and back, making the strongest base in the series massively faster than light. And if you thought this method of scaling was inconsistent for whatever reason, then you'd be flat out wrong, since we've seen Pegasus travel into space and back several times in this series, and Jinka himself claims that Galaxy Pegasus is the winged horse that soars through space at the speed of light after overcoming Destroyer's light speed gravity waves, which completely debunks any claims that Pegasus' feats are just animation. As for the hacks of the verse, this is kind of Beyblade's weak point, since literally every Bey battle in the anime is decided by a big hit or special move, which more times than not is a physical attack, and even when it isn't, it's usually some kind of energy beam or explosion, making bladers in their base kind of like Dragon Ball characters in regards to their abilities. Moving on from Beyblade scaling though, we can now talk about Luffy scaling, since spoiler alert, I personally think he's the weakest of the big three for reasons I'll get into when scaling Naruto and Ichigo. But to get back to Luffy, his scaling is pretty straightforward, as his current peak in Gear 5 is capable of performing his strongest attack to date, the Gun, which has been calculated to have a kinetic energy yield equal to 1 petaton of TNT, which would grant Gear 5 Luffy continental level attack potency at max power. You could also even argue that Luffy scales higher than this if you think he's as strong as or stronger than Whitebeard, who is stated to have the power to destroy the One Piece world, which is much larger than our own, with some people even arguing that it could range from the size of Jupiter to 9 times larger than our own real-life star. However, in my opinion, this scaling is kinda shaky at best, since the statement about Whitebeard is probably just in regards to his ability to cause collateral damage with his fruit and not his AP. Which is why I think Gear 5 Luffy and the other One Piece top tiers are more consistently in the continental range in terms of AP, but hey, to each their own. Skipping past AP though, we can now talk about the absolute war that is Luffy's speed scaling, and to cut straight to the chase, yes, I believe Luffy is definitely faster than light and doesn't cap at light speed, as we literally see him Perception blitzing Kizaru, who we know has FTL reaction speed since he's able to keep up with the same Rayleigh who was able to intercept his light form. Meaning Luffy would need to be around 7 times faster than light to pull off his blitz with White Star Gun, However, some One Piece fans will hear this and still claim I'm lowballing the verse and that Luffy is actually like a billion times faster than light via dodging the pacifistus lasers and undergoing several amps and cliffs before Egghead. But this couldn't be any further from the truth, since if you've actually paid attention to this feat, you'd realize that Luffy dodging light doesn't give him FTL combat or even reaction speed for that matter, as you can't even calc this feat due to the distance the laser traveled and Luffy not being on the same panel at the same time, making this feat incalculable in the first place. I've also seen people argue that Luffy was light speed well before this, scaling off Zoro dodging Kuma's pad cannons or after Luffy dodging Foxy's slow photons, but once again these are just reaction speed feats and they don't scale to how fast a character can fight. Moreover, if you look into Luffy's fight with Kizaru, we see that Luffy, even in Gear 4 Snake Man, one of his fastest forms, is still only around FTL and gets tagged by Kizaru accelerating at the speed of light, making the whole MFTL One Piece meta a calc stack fest that is horribly inconsistent with the feats we've seen in the series. Progressing forward into hacks though, this is probably the easiest section to go over for Luffy, since he's mainly relying on the good old fashioned left, right, good night, and even his main hacks like Advanced Conquerors, Haki, and Future Sight are your standard durability negation and precognition. And before anyone comes at me in the comments section for not mentioning it, yes, I know Luffy is also a rubber man who's immune to blunt force damage and in Gear 5 can extend his rubberiness to whatever he touches, which is kinda similar to Toon Force. However, the problem with these abilities are that they aren't really relevant in this or any other cross-verse matchup that isn't equal stats, to be honest, which is why I'm not really bothering to go in depth on them, but I guess they're at least worth mentioning nonetheless. With Luffy scaling out of the way though, we can now move on to our second member of the big three, Naruto. And we'll once again be starting off with AP, which just like with Luffy is an extremely controversial topic, considering there are two very distinct sides when it comes to Naruto scaling. The side that thinks the top tiers of the verse are around moon to planetary level, scaling off feats like Toneri cutting the moon in half and Kinshiki being stated to be a planet splitter, and the other side that thinks Naruto even before reaching his peak in Barzo is at least Stardust solar system level, scaling off Kaguya's Truth Seeker orb. As for which one is the right side though, I don't really want to argue about that right now and we'll leave it up to your guys' interpretation. However, I will say I lean more towards the planetary Naruto meta since it's way more consistent than the Kaguya scaling, but once again to each their own. Regarding speed though, this is pretty straightforward since upon unlocking KCM1, Naruto was able to keep pace with the Raikage, who was stated in the third data book to move at the speed of light, which would mean Naruto in his later forms like KCM2 and anything after it like 6 fast Sage Mode are at least 10 times faster than light, considering KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto was shown to be just as fast as KCM Minato, who was already keeping up with the light speed Raikage while just in base. Let alone in KCM, which is a greater boost to speed than Naruto's One-Tail Cloak that was already an equal amp to Sasuke's 10 times increase from the Curse Mark, placing Naruto in the FTL plus tier in terms of speed. Lastly, for abilities like with speed, there isn't really much to talk about, since if you've watched Naruto, you'd know bro likes to throw them bitches no matter who he's fighting. But at the same time, he still has some pretty busted hacks like his Rasen Shuriken, which can Dura-neg opponents by attacking their cells, as well as some of his signature abilities like the Shadow Clone Jutsu, which lets Naruto make thousands of copies of himself that are just as powerful as the original, and Regen so potent that he can heal from a punctured fucking lung as if he had reverse curse technique. Now that Naruto scaling has been fully discussed though, we can move on to the strongest member of the big three, Ichigo. And we'll once again be starting off with AP, which unlike with Naruto and Luffy is rather uncontentious in my opinion, since if you're familiar with Bleach you know that Ichigo is shown to be a rival and threat to Soul King Yuha, who is stated to have the ability to reshape and destroy the Soul Society, which we know is a parallel universe to our own, giving both Soul King Yuha and True Shikai Ichigo universal levels of attack potency. And as far as Ichigo's speed goes, this is yet another clear-cut category, as base Ichigo all the way back in the Soul Society arc was already capable of blocking a Gillian Sero, which is stated to be spiritual light, which means Ichigo would be well into the MFTL tier in terms of speed due to the amount of quantifiable Bankai-like amps he gets before reaching his peak at the end of the series. Switching gears to Ichigo's abilities though, they're rather lackluster in comparison to his scaling, as like with Beyblade, Ichigo is relying on his raw strength and spiritual pressure as opposed to any real abilities, and even his main ability in Bankai is really just a physical amp, which is really similar to Dragon Ball in a lot of respects. That being said though, Soul Reapers like Ichigo are still able to directly attack opponents' souls, which is still a form of durability negation on top of Ichigo's already insane stats. But with all combatants scaling out of the way, it's now time to answer the question of just who wins between the big three and Beyblade. And if you've been paying attention, you've probably already realized that both Naruto and Luffy stand no chance against the likes of top tiers in the Beyblade verse like Jinka and Pegasus, even if you were to rank both versus scaling, as even at the mid-ball, Beyblades are galaxy level with MFTL feats, which far surpasses anything we've seen from Naruto or Luffy realistically. However, when it comes to Ichigo versus the Beyblade verse, then things take a completely different turn, since Ichigo is easily in the universal ranges of AP and also has MFTL scaling, making things a lot less clear-cut since top-tier bladers and bays like Ryuga and El Drago are also universal scaling off Twisted Tempo while not even at their peak that they reach in Metal Fury. Which in my opinion makes Ichigo vs Beyblade a way more interesting discussion if he were to be fighting any legendary blader one-on-one, but he definitely wouldn't be able to take on all 10 or clear the verse. But again, this is all just my opinion at the end of the day, and even if you don't agree with it, I think Beyblade even being in the discussion with the big three is a huge accomplishment, and I'm just glad to see the series making a comeback since it really did help ignite my passion for anime at a young age, as well as so many others in the power scaling community. Speaking of the anime scaling community, I would also quickly like to shout out the video sponsor, Anime Express, the best place to shop for high quality anime merch from your favorite series like Jujutsu Kaisen, Naruto, and more. And for a limited time when you use code SAGE10 at checkout, you'll receive a 10% discount off your entire order. So be sure to take advantage of that while you can, and again, huge thanks to Anime Express for sponsoring the video.